Hi fam and welcome to the best of 2020 where I talk to you about my best books of 2020, and this is the third time I am filming this because I just found it really difficult to compile my best books. Editing Smriti here to tell you that if you hear some rustling noises, I am so sorry. I decided to be a dumbass and wear these long earrings today, which just kept hitting the mic and I didn't realize it. So that's what you're hearing. Trying to remove it, but if it doesn't get removed, I'm sorry. Because there are just a lot of them. I read 120 books this year, in 2020, and they were just all really, really good. I had a really good reading year. I think this is the most that I have read as an adult, but yeah, as a child, I just read a lot. But yeah, it was a great year full with a lot of really great books. I really pushed myself and got to books that I had been finally wanting to get to and just like push the boundaries of what I usually read. So yeah, let's just get to it. I'm going to talk about my top 20 and they are ranked, which is why it is so difficult for me, but it's fine. We're just gonna go with it. I'm gonna talk about, not really gonna talk about my bottom five. I'm just gonna name them, and then we'll just talk briefly and then move forward as we go up. Anyway, let us begin. At number 20, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. At number 19, we have Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. At number 18, we have Chowringee by Sankar, translated by Arunava Sinha. At 17, we have I Remember Abbu by Humanyun Azad, also translated by Arunava Sinha. And at number 16, we have Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. At number 15, we have Educated by Tara Westover, and this book, holy shit! So it's a memoir, and honestly, it really made me feel so uncomfortable while reading it because it essentially follows Tara Westover's life living with her parents and her siblings in like a sort of survivalist family in the US, and they basically do not trust the government, so nothing to do with anything to do with the government, so be it hospitals or be it schools, and she describes moments in her life that just were like, I don't know how to describe it. It just made me feel a lot of things, and I really felt for Tara Westover. I really liked that the way she wrote it. It wasn't a very like black and white situation. It was a gray, and I liked everything so much. I actually have an entire dedicated review, so I will link you to that. I read this in the beginning of lockdown, so that Smriti just has a better hold on what she felt on this book. But yeah, this was a book that definitely stuck with me and I would definitely recommend. The next book, which is number 14, is Other Moons, which is Vietnamese short stories of the American War, and this is an anthology of short stories obviously. Some are fiction, some are non-fiction, and I really liked that the way that they compiled all of these stories. The people who compiled this really put some thought into who these stories are going to be, what these stories are going to be about, and to give you a holistic view of the war. I also really like the fact that they gave you sort of a history of the story in terms of like what it was trying to say, and also like a biography of sorts of the author, so that you kind of got like a holistic view of just everything. And yeah, I really loved most of these stories. I feel like the average rating that if I had to give each story was about 4.5 stars. And yeah, there was a tremendous book. There is the first story. If I think about now, I still will cry because it's about a dog and holy shit, it's so good. But yeah, definitely recommended. Number 13 is Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. This was my first book read by them, and holy shit, I absolutely fell in love. This is their young adult book, and it basically follows Jam, who lives in this city called Lucille, if I'm not mistaken, and it just says that there are no monsters in Lucille, which basically means that there are no bad things that happen in Lucille. And Jam's mother is an artist, and while interacting with one of her paintings, Jam sort of brings this monster which is in the painting to life, and the monster sort of says, and she sort of calls, she doesn't actually, it's not a monster, the thing she calls pet, but the pet says that there are monsters in Lucille, and monsters are essentially bad people who are doing bad things, and they have to hunt this monster down. This book is so simple if you think about it, just as if a child were to read this, they would take something out of it, but as an adult, as you read it, it just had so many layers to it. It was just so beautifully but simply written, and I read this mostly in like one sitting. I gave this immediately to my mother and she loved it as well, and Akwaeke just does such an amazing job of this. Definitely recommended. At number 12, we have Slapstick or Lonesome No More by Kurt Vonnegut. And this book is such a weird book, but I loved the themes that Kurt Vonnegut wanted us to talk about. And I feel like it was especially interesting that we were talking about loneliness and the need for companionship during a lockdown. And I think that's why this sort of hit me more. But the way Kurt Vonnegut does this is through a very bizarre sort of way, which is how most of his books are. But essentially, we follow this guy who is the king of Manhattan, but he was the last president of the United States. And they are sort of living in a pandemic world where there aren't too many people living in New York anymore. There aren't too many people alive anymore. And he like is reflecting on his life, reflecting on his like missing his sister, and I think that this book, essentially, if you read the very beginning, like the introduction, it was a book that he wrote after he lost his sister, so you can kind of see where this came from, and it was just such a beautifully weird book but just made you think so much. And it is a sort of book that has stuck with me since then. His in other books, Slaughterhouse-Five, I read like more than a decade ago, and that stuck with me for, I don't know, a decade. So I feel like this is another book that will definitely stick with me for another few decades, at least. So yeah. At number 11, we have Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars by Cheng, Thom. And this is actually a book that was recommended to me in the comment section of one of my videos. So thank you to whoever sent me this comment. This basically follows this trans girl as she leaves her family and goes to this other city of sorrow, if I'm not mistaken. And it basically tells us of her life in the city, but through various very different sort of ways. So you get it through letters that she writes to her sister. You get it through like vignettes and like sort of things that have happened. You get it through poetry. You just get it through a lot of different means, and it's in no way like has a strict plot per se, which is very linear, but it is just such a wonderfully written book. There was just so many meanings behind the words, and you felt the power of those words as you were reading them, and I just really appreciated it. I feel like Cheng Thom definitely must be a spoken word artist, which she is, and yeah, it was just it was just such a stunning book. Okay, we are in the top 10. So, how could I be in my top 10 and not mention Chosen Spirits by Samit Basu? This is a book that I read twice this year. First time, I think, in March, and then later on in August or September during the JCB round of things, where essentially this was longlisted and shortlisted for the JCB prize, which is a prize for literary books in India. And this was just a ride. Like, how do I explain it? It's essentially, I've explained it actually so many times and talked about it so many times. I've also interviewed the author actually, so I will link that down below. It's a Instagram, IG live sort of situation, but it was such a great time. Samit Basu is essentially India's most prolific science fiction writers, and this is his latest novel. This follows time in India, like just about 10 to 15 years down the line, so like maybe our 2030s, where the communal aspects of India have become worse and at the same point of time the technology has obviously become better. So we kind of see this world, and it's supposed to be dystopian, but Samit doesn't think that it is dystopian because it does feel like this is what the world will be, if you get what I mean. And yeah, essentially in this book we follow two people, Rudra and Joey, and they have like these social media jobs which are just the most interesting. I will link you to a video that I made about books that I wish I wrote, where I talk more about the themes and what the research that he did, and the way that this world was kind of built. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed reading it with people as well, and it just has so much of crazy shit happening in it, with like sex scandals to corporate takeovers to just like a lot. And yeah, this was definitely one of my top 10 reads of the year. At number 9, we have The Majesties by Tiffany Zhao, and holy shit, this book too was just such a mind fuck. Like, I read this book in a span of a day, I think. This essentially follows this two sisters called Gwendolyn and Estella. Gwendolyn wakes up in a hospital and finds out that her sister has poisoned her and her entire family of about 300 people, family and close friends, and basically she is the only survivor. So it's essentially her trying to grapple with why her sister would have wanted to do this, and kind of like going back into time and trying to figure that out. And just there is just so much that happens in this book, and I just really thought that it was so smart, because there is a twist that comes in the end which you do not see coming, or at least I did not see coming. And then you have to kind of go back and you see these hints, and I think that this book became even sweeter for me as a deal, because I, like, at a whim messaged the author on Instagram, and she very sweetly replied to me. and we had like an entire discussion, and she went through like the little like things that happened, and like, you know, those hints that she dropped, and it just felt like, oh my god, I was shook it by this book. But it was still such a wonderful book. It is set in Indonesia, which is a country that I absolutely love, and Tiffany Zhao is also an Indonesian author. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this book. It's a ride. Number 8, we have 6 Acres and a Third by Fakir, Mohan, Senapati, and I wish I had this book in front of me to show you, but I do not, because I lent it to someone. But this is a book that was written in the early 1900s, and then translated to English, and it is essentially a book written in Odia, and it talks about the feudal system and like this one village and the people in it, but like the feudal lord and the people that he kind of rules over in the early 1900s. And this book is just so funny. Like, it is laugh out loud funny, but in the best sort of way. Like, this is what I think satire should be. It's essentially narrated through like these overseer sort of narrators, who you don't really know who they are, but they're narrating everything that's happening, and they are just so funny, like so wry in their humor, and it was just my sort of, I laughed so much, and I absolutely loved the sort of themes and everything that Fakir Mohan Senapati was trying to say. Even though this book was written in the early 1900s, it just has a lot that it has to say about human beings and the nature of humans, and the capitalistic world and all of that sort of stuff. But it was just so good. Holy shit. I tabbed so many parts of this book that I thought were just hilarious. And I think that this is a book that definitely needs to be read, because yeah, you just need to laugh with me. I will link you to a Instagram post that I put up where I narrated this one part of the book, because I was just laughing so hard that I had to share it. So I will link you to that, just so that you get a flavor of things. And yeah, that was that. At number 7, we have Dark Tales by Shirley Jackson. This book I will forever be indebted to, because it introduced me to the queen that is Shirley Jackson. So, as you know, I am really scared to read horror books. So I was kind of scared to get into this book because this is technically horror, but the way Shirley Jackson writes, okay, it's not the horror, like the jump scares that you kind of experience, but the silent horror of human beings being human beings. And I just think that that is so fucking epic. I don't know if I can explain it to you, but the way that Shirley Jackson writes it, it just has you on the edge. It just, it was so good. And yeah, that was, I'm just really glad that I got to read Shirley Jackson, and now I have like a lot of books by her, because oh my god. At number 6, we have a book that I read just in December, but I read it in one sitting, and that is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This book, I think, I didn't know what I was getting into while I was reading this book, and I think that that is the way that you should also be. So I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but essentially what we follow is Piranesi, who is this person who is stuck in this world, or just like inhabits this world which kind of feels like a really, really, really large museum, where there are lots of like statues and like a bunch of other things, and there are like these tides that go in and out, and it's just sort of weird. There is also another person who lives there called the Other, who Piranesi doesn't really see too much, but they kind of just interact off and on certain days. But essentially Piranesi just takes you through his life in this place, and then slowly as the book progresses, you realize that things are not quite as it seems, and just the unsettlement of it all really got to me. I know that there are a lot of people who really didn't like the end, and even when I read it, I was just like, huh, okay, is that why we're gonna go with this? But now that I think about it, and I honestly, like, even on the day I understood it, I honestly feel like I'm a very accepting person with regards to what authors have thought. So I'm just like, okay, that's the way you want to go, cool, that's fine. I'm fine with it. But I absolutely loved this book, and it just caught me by absolute surprise. So yes, this was number 6. Okay, we are on the top 5. So are you ready? Number 5, we have A Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This book, holy shit. It makes me wonder why I did not read this book before, because everyone talks about it. I think that a lot of people read this when they were in school, etc. we were not taught this. We were taught Shakespeare for some reason. That's fine. We were not taught this book, but holy shit, this is a book that you would definitely want to discuss, that definitely fucks with your mind, and it's also a wild ride. Wild ride is essentially the theme of my 2021. It was a theme for a lot of people's 2021, but well, this essentially follows the life of Dorian Gray, who is a very, very beautiful man, and he is... I don't feel like I need to tell you what this book is. I don't feel like I want to tell you what this book is about, because it's a really short book, okay? Like, it's really short. It's about 100... No, wait. How many pages? Let me tell you. It's about 200 odd pages, but it just... There are so many twists and turns in this. There are so many interesting characters in this. I absolutely fell in love with the way that this was written. There were... Oh my god. Yeah, this was just... I don't have words. I don't have words. It was just a really good time. Definitely recommend. One of the best classics that I read. If you didn't know, I did like an entire thing where I was reading like my 30 classics. I tried to read 30 classics before I turned 30 this year, and I will link you to that playlist. But yes, this book, no words. Moving on to a book that I had many words for, but I do not trust myself to talk about them. But at number 4 is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. Why did I not read Virginia Woolf before? I do not know. But like, now I curse myself, but now I'm also happy that I read this. But essentially, this is sort of non-fiction, but essentially it tells you of Virginia Woolf's thoughts on why there are such less female authors in the arts, or females in the arts. And essentially what she tells you through this book is that, and her theory is that you need a room of one's own and you need money in order to have all of these works out there. So, and to be an author, to be an artist, like, that is the reason why we as women have not been able to shine as much, because we just have not gotten the opportunity. And an example that I thought was really interesting that she gave was that she made up like a fictitious sister to Shakespeare called Judith, and she basically said that, hey, if Judith were just as talented as William Shakespeare, and but the point is that Judith would have not been able to go to school. She would have been made to sit at home and do all the chores. She would have not had time or the space to kind of like jot down her thoughts. Even if she did do all of these things, she would have not been given the permission to go about and be a playwright or go anywhere on her own. And just that is something that you need to keep in mind, and that's why she said that in order to be an artist or an author or just anything, you need to give women that thing, like, that is a room of one's own, which is a place for us to think, and money to be able to deal with that. Because back in the day, which this was written in like the 1900s, 1800s, I don't know, but this book, I absolutely loved the prose. I loved that the way she put her thoughts across. I am clearly not even doing little bit of like see, I can't even talk right now. I'm not doing it justice. You just have to read the book to really let the prose wash over you, let her thoughts wash over you. She was clearly just such a talented woman with such amazing thoughts, and I will link you to the video where I spoke about it. But yeah, I love this book. I am gonna read all of Virginia Woolf now. She is my queen. We stand her in this house. Okay, we are on the top 3, and I don't know if you will be able to guess the third, but I know you would definitely be able to guess number 2 and number 1. But number 3, we have the Saga series. Yeah, this just sort of hit me like as a curveball. Like, this was not something that I expected to love, because here's the thing, I'm not really a big graphic novel connoisseur. I like reading fiction and I can appreciate graphic novels. But I don't really like go out there and try to get them. But Saga, holy shit, man, this book, like, these books were like movies. And because, like, you okay, let me just like not get excited and tell you what this book is about. But essentially the whole Saga series follows these two people who are people of different worlds, and they are of warring worlds, so they are enemies, but they fall in love, and they get married and then have this kid, which is sort of like a hybrid of both of them, I guess. And yeah, basically then people are just like, both of their worlds and both the people from their worlds are trying to kill them because they are both deserters and traitors, and they don't want this baby to live. But it is told through the perspective of the baby. The baby is the narrator as a grown-up person, and talks about their journey trying to fight to live. And it's just sorry, my camera told me that I recorded for too long. So anyway, I was saying that this is just a really, really wonderful book. The art itself is absolutely stunning, and the way that stories of these two, but also other people that are sort of connected to them, are sort of interwoven, given their background, given like, just there are so many different stories and timelines and characters, and it's just masterful the way that you kind of see them intersect, and just the flow of it was something that I had never really seen before. So I was just in total awe of this book, of this series, in fact. And I have read only till volume 3 because they are just so expensive, but I can't wait to read the rest of them. I'm absolutely in love. Yes. Whew, okay, at number 2, are you excited? We have this chonky boy called A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. I finally did it. I'm just gonna keep this down, okay, because it's way too heavy to hold. But I finally did it, y'all. I did it this year. I read this book, and I thought that I was reading it to so that I could watch the TV series, but I still haven't. So fun times. But this book, holy shit, it blew me away. I have an entire video which is 53 minutes long about vlogging my journey reading this book. But Vikram Seth is just masterful in his writing. It basically follows a cast of characters and a cast of families in this fictitious world, or no, not a fictitious world, but in a fictitious city called Brahmapur in the 1950, right after India has won its independence. So we get a slice of life from there, but essentially we follow this one family where this matriarch of the family is trying to find her daughter a suitable boy for her to marry. But through this process, we kind of come into contact with a lot of other families, a lot of different people, and I just, oh my god, this entire book, by the way, is just 1 year. It's just 1 year, but so much happens, and it's so good. I was so immersed in the writing. I feel like I knew the people. I feel like I will not forget this world, these people, these characters in a really, really long period of time. There are scenes of this book that still come back to me randomly out of the blue, and I think about them and I'm just in awe all the time with this book. So Yes, this is my number two, and as you would have all maybe guessed if you have heard me talk about books at all, anytime at all, my number one is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This book, how do I talk about it without crying? Because this book left just such a mark on my life. This book is a non-fiction book about Chanel Miller and um, her dealing with being Emily Doe of the Brock Turner rape case. So essentially, she was 22 when she went to Stanford for a party with her sister, and over there she got too drunk, and this guy called Brock Turner raped her. But she was saved. Like, she was saved by these wonderful sweet men. And essentially, she talks about her life after dealing with just the legal battle, and just dealing with being a person who's gone through all of this. But also, she tells you in like the most amazing sort of way about her previous life as well. So you completely, I feel like I know Chanel Miller as a person. And this book just spoke to my soul. I think that this book is a must read for men, especially women, and it's a very, very, very hard read. I am in no way saying that this is going to be an easy read. It is very hard because it talks about sexual assault a lot. It talks about just being a woman in this day and age. It's difficult. It is difficult, but as I have said so many times in various videos, this book, it breaks you down, but then it builds you up. I feel like that is this book. Yeah, I listened to this on audio. I read this on my Kindle, and I then bought this book later. But I highlighted pretty much the entire book because Chanel Miller is just such a beautiful writer. She writes so well. It's absolutely stunning. I don't think I have seen the sort of writing in a while that felt so inherently me. But like, I was like, I will never be able to write like this. But it conveyed everything that I would have wanted it to convey. And it just felt like it was a book for me. I don't know if that makes sense to you. But yeah, that was my top 20 of 2020. Yeah, let me know. Oh my god, I can't believe I've done this. Yay. I please do comment down below with your top book of 2020 as well, and if you do plan to read any of these books, or if you read any of these books because of me, I would just feel so happy. Yeah, I hope your 2021 goes amazingly well, and that you have a lot of great books to read, a lot of great memories to look back on. And I hope you all are doing so well. And I will just see you in my next video. Okay, bye.